Hey, hi, how you going? It's your mate Valstride, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to beat Xenolord Ultra. Let's check it out. So the way I'm going to break this down is use the first half of the video to showcase the fight and talk you through some of the key moments, as well as just share my thoughts on raids more generally. Then in the second part of the video, I'll go more in depth on the actual pals that you want to put together and the raid party composition that you want to go for. And I will say up front that 99% of the how-to in a how to beat Xenolord is really just about preparation, not what you actually do in the fight itself, but I'll elaborate more on this shortly. As for the fight itself, you want to start by setting up a bunch of PAL pods, and these are going to be critical to ensuring that the PALs can get back into the fight after dying, which they inevitably will. This is why you need a few Blazamat Ryus in the party so that they can go around and rescue all of the dead PALs and bring them back to life. I recommend that you set up about 20 pods and you want to scatter them all over the area so that there will always be one close by no matter where your PAL gets downed. Once you've summoned the Xenolord, the only thing you really need to do is mount up onto your Frostallion and fly around really high shooting at the boss. And for this you can use either the plasma cannon or the multi-guided missile launcher, and it doesn't make too much difference either way, because if you're not going for a speed run or anything like that and you're just looking for a base clear, then the DPS doesn't matter too much. The main thing you want to be focusing on is the survivability. So while you're flying around, the main thing you want to be thinking about is ensuring that your Frostallion doesn't get caught up in an Omega laser or a random blast cannon or something like that. And you want to ensure that you're not grounded during the Cosmic Meteor attack. However, the one thing I will say about weapon choice is that once the boss spawns its waves of adds, I do recommend switching to the multi-guided missile launcher so that you can burst them down with AoE damage a lot faster, because you want to clear these out as fast as possible so that your pals can go back to focusing their damage on the boss. Now, coming back to the point I flagged earlier, I want to rant a little bit about the current state of raids, because this is one of the areas I'm hoping that Pocket Pair can improve on most moving forward. The fundamental issue I have is that in their current state, there's literally no player skill required to complete the raids in Palworld. They're not like raids in other games, for example, where in other games, raids typically have complex mechanics and phases that the player has to familiarize themselves with and drastically alter their behavior to survive. In other games, they typically require the player to have good motor skills to time dodge rolls well or something like that, or good resource management skills to balance all their various resource pools, or they require the player to have good micromanagement skills more broadly, such that the player needs to balance a variety of tasks all at once and they can't let any of them slip or they die. Palworld, however, has none of that, or at best, it has very little. So to reiterate, this means that player skill is not a question here. Literally the only thing that a player needs, and I want to fully emphasize this point, the only thing that a player needs in order to beat Xenolord Ultra is the requisite time it takes to breed all of the correct pals, and I think that's just lazy game design. So to me, this means there's really no such thing as a good Palworld player. Like, to say you're good at raids in Palworld doesn't mean anything to me, and if you doubt this claim, here's some footage of me trying my absolute hardest to make sure I use all of those player skills to get the Xenolord clear. Get him, Bastigo. Get him, Bastigo. Good timing. But I'm not going to linger on this point because I don't like to be too negative about the game, and I've already talked about it at length in a 45-minute podcast episode I did with the PAL Professor, which I'll leave a link to here and in the description down below. And in that video, we don't only talk about the issues, we mainly focus heavily on all of the ideas that we have that Pocket Pair could implement to improve this moving forward, and I have full faith that they will because they've been an amazing developer so far. I think all they need is a little more time. Moving on now to the party composition, there's a lot of different ways you can take this, but the simplest and most balanced that I've found is to have 12 Bastigors, 3 Rescue Rios in base, and then 4 Gobfins in party for the player damage buff and a Frostallion as a mount. Starting with the primary DPS, Bastigor is a great choice because it has solid stats all around and has the second highest attack stat out of all of the Ice Pals, with Frostallion coming in at number 1. Frostallion is a decent choice as well, but I prefer Bastigor for two key reasons. First, it's just a lot easier to breed Bastigor because you can pass all of the passives down through various breeding trees from other pals. And two, Frostallion has a bigger hitbox than Bastigor, which means you're more likely to get hit by more of Xenolord's attacks, so they're going to die more often, which leads to less overall DPS. And on that note, the other nice thing about Bastigor's hitbox is that it doesn't get that much bigger when it becomes an alpha version, so you can increase its HP that way without much downside. As for the passives on these, I like to just go with the highest DPS set, which is Demon God, Legend, Serenity, and Musclehead. Now, you can add more survivability with Diamond Body instead of Musclehead, but the pals still die a lot anyway, and to be honest, it makes almost no difference to whether or not you'll be able to clear the fight. If you're looking to do speed runs and you really want to go and min-max, then there is an argument to be made that getting the extra survivability from Diamond Body means they spend less time dead and therefore do more DPS overall, therefore completing the fight a bit faster. But speedruns are a whole different thing, and I'm not really interested in that. I'm just here to show you, the newer players, how to beat the thing. And the last thing you need on your Bastigors is the right moveset. And again, you've got options here, but you can't really stray too far away from the meta, because otherwise your pals won't do enough DPS to beat the timer. The Pal Professor recently did an amazing video on all the best moves for raids, which I'll leave a link to in the description down below, because he's done a better job explaining that than I ever will be able to. So I'm just going to leave it up to him. I definitely recommend you go and check that out. But the moveset that I like to use is Holy Burst, Lightning Streak, and Glacial Impact. And from the conversation I've seen online, moveset is often the thing that most players are doing wrong, which is leading them to ask the questions, why can't I beat this thing? Next, we have the Blazamat Ryus, which will be used for rescuing your Bastigors as they die. Now, there's a couple of reasons we want to go for Ryu here, and the first is simply the good stats and the typing. Being a dragon type means that Ryu is resistant to many of Xenolord's attacks, and after all, Blazamat's only job is to stay alive and revive all of the fallen pals. But the second reason is that Blazamat Ryu has one of the fastest rescue times compared to the other pals. As for the quantity of these, you can get away with just 2, but I recommend 3 for stability because you can get unlucky sometimes when you only have 2, and they can both die. If one dies, it doesn't really matter because the other will just rescue it, but 3 just further reduces the likelihood that they all die at the same time. For their passives, I like to go with Diamond Body, Burly Body, Swift, and Runner. Now, these are all no-brainers. The first 2 are just for tankiness, and the second 2 are to help them with carrying the dead pals to their pods faster. And the last thing I need to point out with these is that in order to get them to rescue the dead pals, instead of getting involved with combat, you need to deselect their combat option in the monitor stand. As for the party pals, you definitely want Frostallion as your mount because its ability is going to do 2 things. First, it's going to convert your player damage into ice damage, making it super effective against Xenolord. And second, it's actually going to boost your damage by 40%. 20% of this is just because that's the flat bonus you get from mounted pals that convert player damage into an elemental type, and the other 20% is because of the second part of Frostallion's ability specifically, which is something that only a few of the damage converting mounts have. And lastly, you just want to stack 4 Gob Fins to buff your player damage. Each Gob Fin is going to add 20% to your attack via its partner skill, Angry Shark. As for the passives of your party pals, the main thing you want to ensure is that everything has Vanguard to further increase the player damage. And then I like to go with Stronghold Strategist on the Gob Fins, and I do have it on my Frostallion as well, but ideally you'd probably just want to swap this out for Runner or Diamond Body just to help keep your Frostallion alive a little more. So with all of this in mind, you might be thinking, Valstride, in the title of this video, you said this would be easy. But getting all of these pals with their perfect passives is going to take me hours and hours of grinding. And you're absolutely right, it certainly will. But this brings us back to the point I was making earlier. There's a difference between content that is grindy and content that is actually hard. If content is hard, it tells me that you need to be a good player to beat it. But to say it again, the only thing that you need to beat Xenolord is time. And I think that sucks because not everyone necessarily has a fair opportunity to engage with the content if they don't have the time required. Most of us work full-time and have families and have better things to do with our time than sit there and play Breeding Simulator And that's why if you're one of those people, please feel free to join the community Discord, which I'll leave a link to in the description down below, and head over to the trading and PAL giveaway section, and from there reach out and I'll be more than happy to take a few minutes to join your world and give you the entire raid army that we've just talked about, because I don't think it's fair that people should miss out on completing this content simply because they don't have the hours to grind away. But before we wrap it up, I just want to give a few more tips regarding some ways that the fight can go wrong. Firstly, sometimes your Bastigors will bug out and get stuck in their power pods after being rescued. They'll essentially just stay in there and sleep, which can be quite annoying. If this happens and you have multiple Bastigors stuck, you can just find a safe time to head to the power box and quickly pull them out and then put them back in again. And second, sometimes your Bastigors will die outside of the base perimeter, which will mean that your Ryus can't rescue them. When this happens, just dismount and push the bodies back inside the circle. But the bugs aren't always bad. Sometimes, for example, Xenolord can get stuck on the PAL pods in weird animations and he just stops doing damage until he goes into his Meteor Strike, so this can essentially just be a free pass. But that's everything for today. If you enjoyed this and you found it helpful, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below what your favorite PAL is to complete the Xenolord raid, if it's something that you've already done and have experience with. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.